She she superannuated from NCERT in November 2022 after serving for 36 years. Prior to joining NCERT, she taught graduate and postgraduate students at Lady Irwin College, University of Delhi, for 3 years. Professor Ahuja has visited more than 20 countries in Africa, Asia, and Europe for training teachers, head teachers, principals, teacher educators, and education administrators in the area of inclusive education. She has also conducted numerous training programs for training of teachers and principals of private and government schools in NCR for developing inclusive classrooms. She is a member of the advisory group to the UNESCO IBE and was advisor in UNESCO's most recent publication, that is Reaching Out to All Learners, a resource pack for supporting inclusion and equity in education. She reviewed the Education for All, that is EFA plans for 17 Asian and Pacific countries with a focus on the linkages between inclusion and the EFA. She has been a member of the working groups constituted by the Ministry of Education for developing e-content guidelines for children with special needs. She has contributed to many national and international research-based publications on education and school improvement for children with special needs. She is also the founder and co-editor of Enabling Education Network Asia. She completed her schooling from American International School, Czech Republic, graduation from University of Delhi, and post-graduation from MS University Baroda. And not only that, she did MNet and doctorate from Jamia Millia Islami. So you can see that ma'am has a rich experience in developing content and developing guidelines for children with special needs. So I invite Professor Anupam Ahuja. Ma'am, we invite you for this session. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon to you, Nidhi. Thank you for the introduction, and a very good afternoon to all the listeners and viewers. It's a pleasure to connect with you, and I look forward to the hour and a half sharing thoughts on how we can include all children and provide them digital accessibility to their learning materials. Let's think about it together. I have put down my thoughts in the form of a PPT, but feel free to raise your hand and to put a question in the chat, because all that we are sharing is based on rigorous research, is based on work in NCERT, what we have learned over the years. And we hope that each one of you can draw your own meaning out of what we share. But do not wait till the very end. You are welcome to seek your clarifications, or anything you want to add as a comment is also welcome. Let's remember, we have an hour and a half, so we'll try to do what we can. I will start with the PPT that I have put together. Yes. Okay, now I have used a few words right at the outset, and I think these words give us the message that we are trying to share when we talk about bringing in equality in the classroom and addressing each child's need. When we do that, let's remember that children are different. They are different in our households, they are different in our neighborhood, they are different in school. Some have visible disabilities. Some have disabilities and differences which are not apparent. Some have differences because they belong to families which are different and not like the others. There is one thing that I want us to always keep in mind as we walk through our journey as teachers and administrators, that for us, I'm sure you would believe in this also, but for us all, irrespective of all the differences that I have mentioned, all are equal. And when we say equal, that means equal in terms of us adapting our teaching for their need, adapting our teaching the learning material for their need, adapting our assessment for their need, and accommodating their excess differences for their needs as well. This difference is to be welcomed. It's to be celebrated. It's not to be frowned upon. It's not to say that had we not had them, our class and life would be easy. We could have, walked through our teaching assignments with ease. No. What we must remember is that those of our learners who have certain challenges and have unique learning styles give us an opportunity to think out of the box, give us an opportunity to understand them, and give us an opportunity to try new and novel methods which are useful for all children. So we become, in the process of meeting the needs of all children in our classrooms, better teachers. So let's start listening to this talk with this preamble. And what I intend to do today is to help you look at children with special needs, understand them more closely, try to understand the salient provisions that the legal right provides for them. And I will also talk about the policy, which is by now 5 years old. But how is it related to the digital technology? What does it say? How should we provide for children with special needs? And also make you and I look at inclusion more closely. Look at the universal design for learning, again from the perspective of what we have done at NCERT and how you can take the next steps forward. We'll also look at design and implementing digital initiatives, what we have already achieved and what needs to be taken up further by you, and how assistive technologies can support children with special needs. So this is the sum total of what I intend to do. Let's begin with a focus on children with special needs. Who are they? Why do we call them children who have special needs? And is labeling the answer when we look at their differences? Well, let's look at some analysis of various definitions that have come to face us over the years. The sum total, the analysis of nomenclature that we use to talk about children who have differences, that indicates that it is better not to think of them with just the label after their assessment, but as teachers to look at them as a group of learners for whom we need to look at the curriculum more closely. We need to look at how we teach them and how we organize our classrooms. Now, once we start looking at these three major teaching processes and teaching schedules for us, we will understand that their needs are, in addition to human and material resources that they may need, we may need to stimulate them for effective learning. Now, this is something that you can keep in your mind, but the point I'm trying to emphasize is that calling a child by a label does not help a teacher. If you address a particular child as an autistic child, for example, firstly, he's not an autistic child. He's first a child, and then he seems to have some behaviors which children with autism exhibit. So first and foremost, it's important to remember that all our children are first children. They have needs just like other children. They also lose their cool. They also feel the joy. They also like to eat sweets. They also like to jump around. they also like to be loved and cared for. And they also like to be made to feel important in the classroom as achievers in their own right. So that's very important, to belittle someone's existence in the classroom just because that particular person is not like others is not what a teacher ever does and should ever think of. A label often tends to point to that. So let's look at children with their characteristics and their learning needs rather than pasting labels which never come off. Now, children with special needs, who are they? They are what you and I know of, children with disabilities. At one point of time, our legal acts used to talk of only 7 such groups. Now, the RPWD Act, which came into force, was enforced in 2016 and makes it a legal binding for us to consider the needs of children with disabilities. The number is now 21. So from it's a large canvas that the legal act is covering. I'll tell you more about that. But children with special needs include children with disabilities. They also include children who exhibit behaviors that interrupt the daily routine and or comprehension in the classroom. They also include children who come from socio-economically disadvantaged groups. Mind you, when a child comes from a socially economically disadvantaged household, he is a child with special needs because of reasons that may be because of disability that the RPWD talks about, but may also be because he is the first child in that family who is joining the AV system or the Navodaya school system. So the exposure that the child has got prior to joining the school and the exposure that the child will get when he goes back home, whether it's a residential school or a day school, is obviously going to be markedly different from another child who may be in an urban city with parents who are from a different background. So our policy talks about looking at the needs of these groups who have been neglected for long and have not been part of mainstream, and urges us to look at their needs and provide suitable provisions in the classroom so that they feel they are equal, maybe different in some ways, but equal in terms of being members of the classroom. Now, children with special needs also include children who may be having difficulties in accessing regular class. Now, these difficulties could be because of the distance of the school to the home, home and school distance, the terrain that the child has to tread to and fro. There could be a small water body that comes in between, which does not allow easy access. It could be marshy land, which gets even more clogged during the rains. It could be forest land that the child has to walk through and may be dangerous. It may be a path which could be having many youngsters who are eavesdropping young girls when they walk to school to and fro. So whatever may be the reason, the difficult access, those children who face difficulty in commuting up and down to and fro from school are also considered children with special needs. So you see, the ambit is large. And you've seen, I've also talked about what we need to do. Let's look further into what our Act says regarding the digital world, what needs to be done, and how do we, what are the provisions that are there for children persons with disabilities as per RPWD Act. Now, I just mentioned that from 7, we have now 21. This, the acronym often used is RPW. W is small w because it represents with, the right of persons with disabilities. So the D stands for disability. The acronym is RPWD Act. That's how you will often hear it being mentioned. RPWD Act 2016. Now, it's a landmark legislation. Why do we call it a landmark legislation? It's a landmark legislation, friends, because it empowers people with disabilities and it protects their rights. It came into force, as I mentioned to you, and as you can understand, in 2016. It has replaced an old act, and that is why from 7 to 21. It has brought significant changes in the legal framework. And let's see how is, according to this act, who is a person with disability? Now you will say, ma'am, why are you calling them person? We are talking about children. Yes, we are talking about children. But a child grows and a child grows to be an adult. So it's always appropriate to address them as a person. And that's what the Act does. It calls them persons with disability. And according to the Act, any person who has a long-term physical, mental, intellectual, or sensory impairment can be looked further into to see whether this impairment is coming in the way of his ability to unfold his potential. So any person with a long-term physical, mental, intellectual, or sensory impairment, which in interaction with barriers, now those barriers, according to the Act, are created by us. I repeat, which in interaction with barriers hinders his, by his we also imply her, his or her full and effective participation in society, equally with others. Mind you, the Act itself makes it very clear what we are saying right at the outset. Equal, yet different. So any person who has a long-term impairment, which interact with, in interaction with the barriers that are existing, hinders his full or effective participation in society, equally with others, is a person who the Act defines as a person with disability. As I said, there are a big number, and that's 21. As we look closely, you will realize that all the 21 disabilities do not have educational significance in schools. I will not spill the beans, let's come to that. But there is another aspect that now we need to focus on very carefully as you listen to me, that the Act says, and mind you, legally it says, it's not just a passing statement. It tells us all that all the content that we've developed should be available in audio, print, electronic media, and in accessible format. I repeat, all the content that is developed needs to be available in audio, print, electronic media, and must be in accessible format. Persons with disability must have access to electronic media. How? We can provide them audio descriptions. So, like you are listening to me now and reading the PPT, they may not be able to read the PPT, but the audio description of my PPT should be available for them. Those who do not understand my language, we should provide them with sign language interpretation. And all that I'm saying should have closed captioning as well. it also says that any electronic goods and equipment which are meant for everyday use must also be available in universal design. So we cannot just get away by writing the price, its precautions, the trademark, just in print and say it's now available for all. So this is part of an Article 40 of the RPWD Act. I feel it's very important for us to spend time understanding the Act and its provision, because you as teachers and you as teacher educators will often be asked, look, there are only a few number of children. Why are you going overboard in, asking us to meet their needs? And why this big hullabulla about, accommodating their needs? Your answer is in this slide. The answer is that we are legally bound to look after their needs as persons who need to effectively participate in society equally with others. We need to provide those provisions. And how we do that, I'm going to elaborate further on. These are the 21 disabilities that are recognized in the Act. I want you to spend some time looking at this very closely, because there are disabilities that are of physical nature, that are visible to the naked eye most often, and there are disabilities that are not visible to the naked eye and can be latent, and you as teachers would realize that there is a need that you need to take care of. There are also conditions that are mentioned here, which, as I told you some time ago, that may not be in your classroom. For example, Parkinson's disease. That may not be really, you may not see that in your classroom. However, you may come across a child who has sickle cell disease. Now you will say, ma'am, if the child has sickle cell disease, why does the Act call this child a child who needs to be under the disability act? Well, the child needs to be considered with as a special needs child, because the child may need a blood transfusion and therefore may not attend school for a very long time. And these long absences may cause gaps in learning. So similarly, those children who may have hemophilia, thalassemia, or other blood disorders may also be part of such medical interventions, which may require long absence from school and may also require certain care in terms of they may be more prone to infections, etc. So as teachers and concerned adults around them, we need to understand. You will also notice that in the physical description of physical categories, we also have acid attack victims. Now you will say, ma'am, acid attack, how does that affect a child's learning in the classroom? Well, it does. The acid attack may leave you traumatized, may leave you getting horror dreams at night, may leave you disfigured, may leave you with lack of confidence to face others who are going to just keep staring at you. So all that I've just mentioned in just one after the other needs special attention, needs care, needs fragile minds handling. All that therefore comes under the category also of people who need to be recognized under the Act in a special way. So please go through this very carefully, because you will have to stand for the rights of all these 21 disabilities. Remember, the Act doesn't stop by saying 21. It also has any other category also mentioned, any other disability. So if you come across any which is not part of the 21, then also the Act says, look for those and be cautious and do include them in regular class. Now, a common thread that runs throughout the national policy of education that you will see with the legal act, the policy has adopted RPWD Act. That's point number one. Now, the second thing that I want you to revisit is I have mentioned very specific clauses in this slide. Clause 23.6, clause 24.4F, or clause 24.4J. This has been done with a clear intention. Clause 4.46, all these clauses highlight to us what the NEP says as regards what we need to focus on when we are looking at children with special needs and how we should make extensive use of digital technology to provide accessible content to these children along with others in the class. First and foremost, right in the introduction of the NEP says that extensive use of technology in teaching and learning, removing language barriers, increasing access for the young students is what it highlights. So if the child is coming from SCDGs and you are in an area where there are predominant tribal groups, you have to remember that the language that is being used in the classroom is the child's familiar language. This applies to other places as well. You have to ensure that teaching learning takes place in an environment where all major languages are respected, and so language does not cause a barrier. The policy also says that software needs to be available in all major Indian languages, and it should be accessible to a wide range of users, including students in remote areas and those that the policy refers to as Divyang Jang. It also says that teaching learning e-content will be something that we don't just do in spurts and starts. It says that all states need to work on this in all regional languages. NCERT needs to develop it. The CIT unit at NCERT needs to focus on that. CBSE and National School of Open School, NIOS needs to also keep that in mind. And you will see as we walk through this session that what NIOS is doing and what other bodies are doing. They say that the policy says that all these organizations and the states should develop e-content and should upload it onto the Diksha platform. And this is mentioned very clearly for everybody to understand and abide by. It also says that existing e-platforms, you know them, all of you have heard of Diksha, Swam and Swam Prabha. They must also be leveraged for creating virtual labs. Standards of content, technology, and pedagogy will be laid to formulate guidelines for e-learning by states, boards, schools, and school complexes, and also higher education institutes. So it doesn't just stop at school level. You have to ensure that there is continued lifelong learning opportunities for all children. Schools will develop smart classrooms for using digital pedagogy. And above all, when we are doing all this, teachers like you will undergo rigorous training. Mind you, this is just the first day, the third session. You are coming for this and you will be asked to join many such training programs so that the rigor in training in terms of learner-centric pedagogy and how to develop and use high-quality online content, be creators yourself, and use online teaching platforms and tools is something that we need to work together on and ensure that teachers all over the country feel empowered to do that. Now, the policy also, as you are aware, as I have just mentioned, talks about SCDGs. Now, this, when we unravel and try to look closely at the SDGs, let's spend a few minutes looking at who they can be. They can be girls, they could be transgender individuals, the gender identities amongst the socio-economically disadvantaged groups need special focus throughout the country. In certain states, the needs are more than others, that we know, but the gender identities, the policy says, it recognizes that certain groups are more vulnerable to exclusion, and the gender identities are our concern. Similarly, socio-cultural identities, such as the scheduled castes, the scheduled tribes, the OBCs, and the minorities. Students and learners who live in far-flung villages, small towns, are residing in aspirational districts. They are considered to be geographical identities who fall under the SDGs. Mind you, nobody has any control on where they are born. So just because you are born in a remote village, the policy says should not make you less of a learner as compared to someone who is in the heart of a big city. It also talks about children with disabilities being the focus, including, for the first time, children with specific learning disabilities are part of the group the policy wants us to focus on. The policy also says that certain economic conditions, again, not under the control of the child. If he is born in a migrant community, that's not something that should hold him back. If he is coming from a poor household where the incomes are low and the parents are running helter-skelter to find 2 square meals for their children, again should not act as a deterrent. Children can be living in vulnerable situations, which are often flooded, maybe dry for long periods of time. Children could be victims of, or children of victims of trafficking as well. So both, mind you, I repeat, they could be victims of trafficking or they could be children of victims of who have been subject to trafficking. So all such children are children we must give focused attention to in order to ensure that we reduce the gap that exists in learning. So children coming from poor urban households, children who are beggars in urban areas, children who have been left out, orphans, all these categories of those who have, over the 80 years we have been independent, have not got their due. The policy asks us to look closely at them. The policy also says that we need to support children by providing enabling mechanisms so that they receive quality education, assistive devices. We need to help their parents realize that they are not to be just forgotten. They are not those who will not be able to achieve substantially in this world. You have to make them realize that there are technological provisions now, there are reservations in jobs, their schools are more accessible, teachers are more aware, and therefore parents need to work with the school systems and higher education institutes, collect with joining hands so as to give these children in equal status in society and equal opportunity for them to unfold their potential. You also need to remember that all schools that exist, there are alternative forms of school that are part of all schools as well. And with these alternative schools, we must encourage them to continue to exist and cater to the needs of children they are working with. The policy also says that certificate courses for pre-service and in-service teachers be made available more, across the country in more numbers, so that we can have special educators who can develop in a way that they are special educators covering cross-disability issues and are able to help varied needs of children along with the regular teacher in schools. The policy says that NIOS will develop high quality modules to teach Indian Sign Language. Now, again, it has clearly specified that, again, so that it is not lost and it is not, we don't account for this requirement and we lose the rhythm. So it specifies this and it says that regular schooling should be provided to children both at the foundation unit, right from the foundational years to the higher education levels. Ensuring equity will not just come as a dream. We'll have to work towards it. So the policy is very clear that we need to have, along with teachers, counselors to be recruited. We need to give free waivers. Still, education is considered to be free, is often said is free, but is it really free? Is also always a question that we are asking. And research tells us that there are many hidden costs as well. So free waivers and scholarships to be offered to meritorious students from SCDGs on a large scale. That's something that the policy talks about. And let us become instruments for children to get them and use these scholarships and get these waivers across. Because one thing providing for them in the policy, the other implementing what is provided for. So free waivers and scholarships, you and I have to ensure that they reach the needy and those who can use them and progress further. There are large populations of sometimes clustered of socio-economically disadvantaged groups. The policy says, let's declare them as special education zones. And then when we are talking of additional schools that need to be set up, let's set them up as additional JNVs, KVs in aspirational districts and also in these special educational zones. Again, as I said, to make access available to all, including those from SCDGs. So a child, just because he's born in a family that is in a remote place, should not feel that the school is not accessible or is not available for us. That is what the policy says. States need to do microplanning to ensure that. Now, interventions are also talked about right from the early childhood years, which are clearly spelled out, and special mechanisms need to belong for children who are belonging to tribal groups. What do we do to give them quality education? We need to think about them. How do we adjust the learning outcomes with a focus on attainment of them for children, all children, including those belonging to SC, ST, and OBC groups? These and many other concerns are very beautifully woven into the policy to talk about the equity, which cannot just happen. It has to be planned. The policy talks about gender inclusion fund, bridging gender gaps, policies targeted for girls only. How do we integrate gender sensitivity as part of the curriculum? How do we strengthen the existing KGVBs? It talks about strengthening them right up to grade 8, 12. And also, there is a very clear mention of not just stating, considering the rights of children, but ensuring that these rights are getting actualized. And there is a vehement call in the policy for safety. Safety and careful attention to safety and rights of all children, so that once they join the school systems, they do not leave them. They do not drop out. Actually, you and I know no child wants to be drop out, to be a dropout. Most often, we push them out. So, what can we do? What attention needs to be given so that their safety and their rights are actually protected and actualized? All this is talked about in the policy, and we need to understand these provisions that are mentioned and how do we unfold them in our actions. I think this gives us a gist of what are the legal rights. I have explained to you who are the children with special needs and what does our policy say. At this juncture, if there are any comments that you would like to make, look around you in your classrooms, think about where you are coming from, and mention, look at all that I've mentioned to you. And if there are any comments or any statements you want to make or questions you want to ask, I can take 3 comments right now in terms of giving you an opportunity to share your thoughts right now. So feel free to put your comments in the chat box, or you can even come and speak. Yeah. You could use your mic and also. Yes. What did they say that gift children? Yes, you're. Who said this? Das. Yes, Mr. Das. Alikesh Dasji, you are absolutely right. The policy does mention that we need to focus on not just the groups that I have talked about, but the gifted children as well. They are within the purview of our work, and they need to be the focus too. Very well stated, a very good comment. Thank you. Any other comments or thoughts? Okay.
And there is a comment in the chat box from Andhra Pradesh. How
Yes.
can we identify children with special needs in a classroom?
Yes. Now, identification is a long process. I know for sure that your state has done a lot of work in this direction. Identifying a child is a teacher's job to a limited extent. Why do I say that? Because a child could have a history which you are not aware of in the school. When the child comes, you are noticing only the child as a learner. So, in order to identify a child with special needs, there's a need to see the birth process, the prenatal period, the early years, the stimulation that a child got, and to raise the red flags that were there in his growth pattern. And then once we understand that, we also know that there are certain common characteristics that children tend to, under a particular category, exhibit. So as a teacher, you can screen, Prashast app that the NCERT has developed is a very good identification tool that you can use. Both a teacher and a special educator can together look at children in the classroom and see whether they fall under the category that we are talking about. So I would suggest that, sorry, it's from 1 minute. Yes. So I would suggest that you look into the Prashas app, go to the CIT website, download it, and you and the special educator can you can identify their needs but will not be in a position to be able to label them. So as a teacher, please take the first step, use this app, identify their needs, and based on what you ascertain, you can change you can adapt the teaching methodology and the processes to suit their learning styles. There's another question that someone has asked, which is from Pundicherry, which is related to another disability which the RPWD Act has clearly specified, that is children with specific learning disabilities. Now the question is, by when can we identify, at what age? Now this is again an excellent question. There is a lot of research that's going on as to when we can identify. Actually, it indicates that certain characteristics are visible very early amongst these children. You don't have to wait till they start reading and writing. There are certain observable characteristics which children with learning disabilities exhibit. That going through those characteristics can help us single out how they are different from the others. And then when they start reading and writing, you can also focus on their the way they read, the way they sometimes have difficulties in writing, spelling, arithmetic. There are different, it's almost like you will find some children who are very good at mathematics, but have difficulties when it comes to reading and writing. Some children may be just having difficulties in reading and not, they would be able to write, but may not be able to read. They may skip, they may reversals, omissions. You have to observe them over a period of time. And by what age, it's very difficult to really say. I would say, as a parent and a teacher, observe their learning patterns and see how they are different from the others in the class. That's the best way. Look at the errors they commit and try to identify their learning style and adapt the teaching and instructions according to how they are learning. That is the best and easiest way to know these learners and to know their learning styles and work with them.
Ma'am, another question is, what do you mean by special education zone?
Yes, Nidhi, I'm reading the chat box. Though hyperactivity is not mentioned, disability, but is an hyperactive child. Yes, I did say to you right at the outset, when we were looking at children with special needs, that those children who have certain behavioral issues and disrupt the classroom, and the hyperactive children fall under this group, are also children who may have behavioral issues which you need to handle. I'll take this another one comment, which I really like the comments that you are giving, and it shows that you are really actively with me. I will quickly read the two questions and then I'll comments, and then I'll give my thought. I'll share my thoughts on them. A child is completely normal, but can't learn anything inside the classroom. Can I categorize him as as a child with special needs? No, because I say that because there is nothing like a normal child. Look, right now I'm talking to you. If I was not using my specs, I may not be able to see the PPT that I'm showing you clearly. So a normal individual can become absolutely not, it may not be possible for the person to behave normally just because a pair of spectacles is not there. So normal is a notion which needs to be always revisited. And some of us look normal, but may have certain hidden characteristics which we are capable of concealing. And some children are not so smart. They cannot conceal their differences, and therefore we tend to call them not normal. So my reaction is there is nothing known as such as normal. And you're also saying that the child can't learn anything inside the classroom. My comment is, let's relook at the way we are teaching. And let's also relook at what is the background from which the child is coming. Most often, if the child is not learning anything, there are many peels to this onion. The more you open it, the more you will realize that the peels keep coming more and more visible. In other words, it could be a trauma that he's carrying for a very long time. It could be simply parents talking loudly, too loudly for the child's comfort to each other. The child may be thinking they are fighting, they may be just talking, or it could be somebody who is teasing him on the way to school, and that is happening every day, and nobody notices it, but the child is impacted. So, all I'm trying to say is there could be many reasons why a child cannot be learning. So, let's not jump at conclusions and call them with names. Let's look at not the child. Let's not point a finger at the child. Let's remember there are three fingers that point back at us. The next comment is, many schools and teachers are not equipped to use Prashasta. There is apprehension of giving wrong information also. As a state, how do we address this problem? Excellent question. I will please give me your email ID. We will come back to you on this in greater detail, because it will take me time to explain this to you. And also please mention your state and your email ID. With your name, we will get back to you on this in greater detail. Okay? All right. There is one more. One must be passionate about teaching. Very well said, Shri Shaliman. Sorry, TLD is, yes. Thank you so much for that comment. Passion takes care of everything. And the next comment is, do children need psychological tests to know the level of mental age and differences in physical age? Sure, we do. But let's remember that no test is foolproof. And a test should only lead us to more information about the child. But it should not make us jump to conclusions. Most tests in our country are not adapted to our settings. And therefore, they are just leads. They are not stamps that we will stamp children's shoulders with and leave those imprints for life. No, please do not consider any test result as a static end for a child. A score is not what the child, once he gets, it doesn't stay forever. And there are many reasons that a child may score poorly in a psychological test. So take them with caution. Any assessment needs to be done repeatedly. And let me tell you, there is nothing more important than a parent's observation and a teacher's observation. A test, a psychological test result should be always handled with very cautious hands. Just leads, nothing more than that. Okay, so let's go on then. Thank you for all these questions. We have another half an hour. Excuse me, I'm sipping water. So therefore, these are these gaps in between. I will now go on to helping us all look at 4 things that I think in the next half an hour I would like to touch upon. And they are related to understanding the concept of inclusion. Now, each one of you will say, ma'am, we know what inclusive education is. Yes, indeed, of course you do. You are very senior teachers, and I wanted you right at the outset to clap for yourself for all that you have achieved. Let's do that for ourselves. I want you to spend some time telling yourself that you have done a lot. You know, it's very rare that we often address, you know, we clap for children, we clap for others, but we rarely clap for ourselves. So I want you to take a short break and clap for yourself. And when you do that, let's also remember that these claps must echo in your ears, because practicing inclusion is not something that's uh, very easy for a teacher. When you are handling diversity in the classroom, which is now here to stay, gone are the days when our classes were homogeneous. We have diverse learners, we have girls, we have boys, we have transgender, we have children from socio-economically disadvantaged groups, and we have differences amongst these learners as well. So the diversity is big. Now, when you have 60, 40, 80 learners, and each one is different, obviously the task is big. When we are talking about inclusion and practicing inclusive education, your earlier questions, I reacted with the same message that I have here on this slide. We have not to find a fault with the child. The child is a given person in your class. Now, what you have to remember is you and I have to work together to work towards the system and change the system so that these varied learners can fit into the school system the way it exists. So we are not here to point a finger at the child. We're not here to say, you are a child with specific learning disability. You have these characteristics. I think the onset comes at age 2. You have been having them for the last 8 years. You have these problems. Therefore, I'm giving you this assessment. And therefore, you need to learn only that, the highlighted portion in the chapter, and that's it. No. You have to remember that you have to change the assessment system in such a way that a child with specific learning disabilities also finds a way to answer your written exam, your oral test, your project work in a way that you are addressing his learning method, his learning style, whether it is whether the child is poor in reading, then you have to give him more abilities to give his responses in a manner that he can indicate that he needs more time to read. And once he has read, maybe a multiple choice and open-ended statement will be more feasible for him to handle than just writing the answer to a question which requires rote memory. So you see, this is an example that I've taken from your comment to explain to you that you need to look at how you can change the systems, whether it is the teaching pedagogy, the teaching content, the assessment, the way the classrooms are organized, so that all learners who are different and are part of your classrooms can learn. So the legal act also, the Article 17 of the RPWD Act also clearly says that we need to adopt specific measures to facilitate inclusive education, which is defined as what? A system of education that is wherein students with and without disabilities learn together, and the system of teaching and learning is suitably adapted to meet the learning needs of different types of students with disabilities. So therefore, all children can learn, all children are different, and different abilities, ethnic groups, size, age, background, gender, all that, the differences will be accommodated because we have changed the shape of the table. You see how the system has now got a scope to accommodate the different shapes. We are not changing the shape of children, which is what we used to be focusing on by saying, let's make them all normal. Now we are very clear with the way we have progressed globally that we should not work towards making children fit the system. We must work towards making our system flexible enough to accommodate the needs of all the learners in our classroom. Now, in many countries across the globe, if we see, we usually were inclusive education was limited to children with disability. But this reach has expanded, and internationally and nationally, we are now focusing on principles that support and welcome diversity amongst all learners in our classroom. And we are very, very vehemently focusing all our efforts towards this belief that the basic human right of every individual needs to be respected, as this right, when we respect it in school and right from the early years, it helps us build inclusive societies. Mind you, I and you cannot have a separate bus operating in Chennai only for the blind, yeah, on all the routes parallel. Similarly, a separate vehicle only for all the wheelchair users. No. Mind you, I use the term wheelchair user. I did not say wheelchair bound. Use of positive terminology is part of inclusion. We can call a child low vision, but we can also call a child with remaining sight. This points towards our attitudes towards disability and differences. If our attitudes are accommodating, are tolerant, we will be building schools and classrooms with full of empathy and respect for differences. Children learn to respect differences if the classroom environment is accordingly planned. There are going to be children who will have differences of social status, religion, gender. I talked about sexual orientation, language, where their migrant status, their ability, and this list can go on. Yet, these are the nuances of inclusion and equity that we need to think about. Inclusion will not happen on a particular day or during a particular time of the day. It's a process. And we have to work towards overcoming the barriers that limited the presence and participation and achievement of our learners. And equity is about ensuring fairness. Now, this is very, very important. I repeat, it's about ensuring fairness, where education of all learners is seen as having equal importance. So a comment such as, तुम तो सूरदास हो, तुम्हारी तो किताब अभी आई नहीं है, तुम स्कूल में मत आना, is prohibited, because you are passing a value judgment statement, you are passing your problem onto the child, and that is not fairness. So where education of all learners is seen as equal, of having equal importance, you and I as teachers have to ensure that classrooms are equipped with material that caters to the varied needs of our learners. And every learner matters and matters equally. That's something that inclusion tells us. And it also tells us children who learn together learn to live together. And children who live together live to nurture an inclusive nation. And we as a country have always been inclusive in our character. Let's continue to do that. This slide explains all that I have said. Just look at it closely and you will understand that all students learn together in the same classroom. That's what inclusive education calls for. It calls for a child who has visual difficulties not needing to wear these goggles. Even though his eyes may not look like others, the classroom should be such that we do not depict them as children with horns on their head. So any form of difference need not be concealed. That's what a good inclusive environment for learning is. And I brought this visual in this slide only to highlight this point. It requires providing equity in the classroom. You see the difference between equality and equity. Please comment on it in the chat box. I hope this visual is clear. This is an excellent material I would urge you all to look at. It's a recent material that has been developed by UNESCO, free, downloadable, available in many languages across the globe, gives you useful tips. Let's look at inclusion a little more closely. Uh, it's not what I intend to show is that in this uh, visual, all go up to the come into the ordinary school, and we change the system to fit the child's need. And we are talking about all these learners, those who have never come to school, those who are in special schools, those who are children with disadvantaged home backgrounds, special needs, all come in the yellow column bracket. Okay, there is this is something again which gives us the clear message of inclusion. I hope it's clear. Let's also look at this visual. I would like you to write in the chat box, in these two figures, according to you, I know you will all agree with me that there is no single one size fit all. We need to customize according to individual needs. This is a visual which explains everything I need to tell you about UDL. It tells you that there are two telephone booths. Tell me, which of the two would you select? Quickly in the chat box, just punch it in. Would you like which of the two do you think is a good telephone booth to build? Have you written it in the chat box? Your comments? Yes, I think you have. And you are talking about UDL, all of you. Very good, excellent. That's really an active group. You have given me a lot of energy to take the next session, the next part of the session forward. You all agree that it's UDL, and that is the telephone booth that does not make the differences apparent. And this is what we need to practice in our classroom. Let's remember, some children learn with pictures, others may learn when read aloud. Some children may like to conduct an experiment to learn. So their varied background, strengths, needs, interests need to be our focus. And if we were to make children put their fingerprints, the way children learn is as unique as their fingerprints on a wall. So I am not saying this. This is what research evidence indicates. Why do we ask you to follow the universal design for learning? Is very simple. The answer is it's learning for all students. This approach minimizes barriers and maximizes learning opportunities. This again cannot just happen. You have to follow these principles. I urge you to look at this slide closely later on because it represents the crux of inclusion. It tells us that just a book in a printed form is not what children need. Children need varied forms of representation. Whether it is braille, it's obvious why. Some may need digital text with options to enlarge. Some children may want a yellow background on a black screen. Some may want to have text to speech. Similarly, there are different forms in which they would like to express themselves, to indicate what is their learning that's happening. You should provide opportunities for that. And what may fire one student's imagination will not fire in another. So we need to find multiple ways to engage them as well. Now, this is what our digital technologies that support children with special needs, if we look at that closely, it is very clearly standing out that we need to publish our material born digital. Because when it's born digital, it can be born accessible as well. And we need to work on accessible digital textbooks. There's a lot that I have talked about. What is accessibility and how we can work on it, I have mentioned here. What are the essential components of accessibility I have covered in this slide? I would like you to look at these slides later on very closely and understand them. They are within their reach. It is giving you a lot of information that is useful. During COVID time, we worked on a very important part of this talk is the uh, guidelines that we developed for developing e-content, both the academic and the non-academic content. These were developed during COVID. These guidelines are available on the NCERT website and on the Ministry of Education website. Please go through these guidelines. They are real wealth for all of you who want to develop accessible material. Here is another slide that I have put. These are all initiatives in digital technology for providing accessible digital content for school curriculum. Please open them at length and try to understand them. This is an innovation we did. You will find a lot on this. Mind you, 1.5 hours, I cannot take you through all details. My intention is to give you possibilities to understand how we can use digital technology and what efforts have been made at NCERT. Look at them closely. All these are landmarks in development because we have worked with states collectively with lots of experts nationally and internationally to develop these experiences for you. Please look at them closely and understand how they are useful for your children. The digital version, for example, of this Barkha, a reading series for all, is something your children will enjoy a lot. It has a how to use page. It has got many features which help all children enjoy reading, and this is accessible to all learners as well. Please look into these. They are free, available on our website. What are its features? This has been tried out, research based. You will understand more about it if you open any one of those stories and try to understand what we have done. Each story has a sign language video which begins building the interest of a child to the story. It also has a regular video. Idea was that children in their young age, if they read a story together, they will understand that signing is not only for a few. Here is a story which is signed by a teacher in both sign language and regular video, and children access it commonly in the classroom with each other. You can change you can navigate in the story through all the 16 pages going to and fro. The very simple arrow which allows you to move to the next page, and the fact that you can go back to page 3 from page 12 on your own without anybody noticing it, without the stigma of me being a poor reader or a slow learner or a learner who forgot what they read. All these things get taken care of in a digital version. There is a difficult word that comes in the story, you don't understand it, it pops up. And that helps you understand that I don't need to ask an adult always to explain a difficult word for me. The difficult word woven into the digital version on the page helps the child read smoothly. The size of the text, the image, all that can be worked through. Please go through this. You will see that it has been very sensitively handled for all children, including those with special needs. For example, an introduction of a story which is hide and seek, chupan chupai. The introduction itself will tell you that it tells a child who may never have seen the world, understand what is a story, what is the game about, and feel curious to know what his friends are doing in the story while they are playing this game. So these introductions are very sensitively written, and our research told us that children enjoyed them thoroughly. We worked on what we learned into our textbooks. All that journey that we began is also available. We provided material in audio tracks, both with dramatic storytelling and a fluent audio track, simply to provide UDL. There's a video which is in sign language, it has captioning, it has visual, and this video is not meant only for children with hearing difficulties. It is meant for all children. So it has illustrations, audio, subtitles, and a teacher using sign language. This is an example of how a regular chapter in a book can be converted into a multimedia mode. So please go through these and you will realize that we have worked on the conclusion section. We have provided a glossary of difficult words, all that to show how UDL can be practiced digitally as well. These are some stories that we had adapted. These are some other accessibility features that are available in our textbooks. Please browse through those. You will also know that some children will need assistive devices. And these assistive devices can be low-tech, middle level, and high-tech assistive technologies. These are some examples of low-tech assistive technology that children with special needs would need. A simple pencil grip can make all the difference. A head pointer can make a big difference. A modified scissor can help a child who has never used a scissor in the class to cut, but suddenly realizes that this modified scissor, though I may have cerebral palsy, but I can also cut along with other children. These are small steps and low-tech assistive technology items which help to build that first step in school as an equal. And you have to find ways to do that. A talking calculator, an audio book, an adaptable switch, wheelchairs, screen magnifiers, screen readers, text readers, eye tracking devices, etc., etc. All these are available. I have drawn a digital technology mind map for you. I end, friends, my talk by saying, when we are talking of children with special needs, our Nobel laureate has given us a big wisdom that emanates from these few lines. The lines say, the problem is not how to wipe out differences, but how to unite with all differences intact. I wish you all the success. As you do that, let me reiterate, technology makes learning accessible for all. Explore it, you will enjoy that journey, and you will enjoy the success that comes with the journey. Thank you for your attention. I am now ready to take questions from you. I know it has been a roller coaster session, but the intention was to take you through this roller coaster so that you can find your own answers as you walk this journey. Remember, not alone. When we explore, we find partners. We do not expect the teachers to become superhuman, but we expect teachers to become empathetic, to work towards this goal. I repeat, once we do this, we find we become better teachers. Thank you. Thank you very much. And I now am looking closely at your chat box. If there are some comments and questions, I will take them. Yes, there's a question. Ma'am, please share strategies for dealing with situations child can show learning. Okay, sure. Again, please give us your email ID. I will share that with you. Good question. Very good question. I have already to talk about one. I will take both these as my homework. I'll do that. Please send your email as well so that we can come back to you. Your name, email, and your question. Okay, thank you. Good. I'm glad to hear that. Okay.
And there is one more question. Ma'am, please share a link of learning material for children with the learning disabilities age-wise.
Stage-wise.
Age-wise.
Age-wise. Okay. I will share material, learning material for children with learning disabilities. You see its use according to the age that you have. It is age-wise, but the ages are not cast in iron. You know, it's very difficult to look at groups across our country and use it, you know, age group wise, please. So please use it with caution. Thank you for your positive comments. You have shared your email IDs. Okay, you found it innovative. That's good to know. Okay.
Okay, so
PPT will be shared in the group. The organizers will ensure that. Okay, great. Thank you very much. Feel free to continue to ask questions. My email ID is on my PPT. You can send your questions on my email. I will get back to you, I promise, immediately. Okay? Or if I'm traveling, I will tell you by when I will get back. Thank you.